Okay, folks, this is a little review video I'm going to do about some aftermarket tubular control arms that I purchased from seller Overworldmotor on eBay. This is a Chinese manufacturer of aftermarket parts. They manufacture tubular control arms for 64 to 72 GM A-body cars, and they sell them on eBay very cheap. These control arms, this particular set that I have here, I paid $221 for them, shipped to my house for all 4 control arms with new ball joints and all of the hardware. Really a pretty good deal. I remember 20, 30 years ago when US-based companies came out with these types of control arms for these cars. They were very expensive, upwards of $1,000. They were just cost prohibitive for most folks. So I decided to purchase these against my better judgment. But when I got them, I was very impressed with the quality of the fab work. They were very well made and sturdy. But as I began to install them, I did find some shortcomings, and I'll go over that here. One of the things that's in the notes in the description of these things is that you cannot use them with drum brakes. That, in fact, is not true. The only reason that they state that is because the lower ball joint does interfere with the brake backing plate. But you can cut a small section out of the back of the backing plate to allow for that clearance, and it works just fine. I wasn't quite ready to spend the money to put disc brakes on this car. This particular car is a 1966 Buick Skylark. So I do have the drum brakes on here, and it works just fine. Let's see. One of the other shortcomings that I discovered, and I don't know if you can see it here, you can see where my sway bar is attached that I had to cut some brackets off right there. These control arms came with a Heim joint for the lower portion of the sway bar link, and there was some brackets welded right there where you can see that I had to cut off. Those brackets were very flimsy. They were not very thick at all, and they were not in the right place to line up with the sway bar link. They would have been at a steep angle, and since the brackets were flimsy already, I just didn't feel like it would work very good. Also, they were spaced too far apart, and the Heim joint had a sloppy fit. It really would have needed some spacers to fit in there correctly that were not included with the kit. So I just decided to throw that stuff away and used an existing hole in the bottom of the control arm for a more standard type of a sway bar link. It's still not quite in the right position for my liking. It really needs to be moved forward about an inch in the control arm in order for the geometry to be correct, but it'll probably work okay. One of the other issues that I had with it, these control arms have hard Teflon bushings in them, and they're greasable, except the grease fitting is in the wrong location. They have it on the top side of the bushing bore, and once it's installed in the car, you cannot get a grease gun onto that. You can't grease it once it's in the car. So I'm going to have to drill some holes in the bottom here and put a grease fitting down here on the bottom where I can grease them. So that's a problem. Also, the grease fittings that they provided are not a standard type of a Zerk fitting that you would find in the US. The thread size is different, and the shape of the fitting is a little bit different. My grease gun didn't like it very well. And also they were made out of some cheap pot metal material. Several of the grease fittings were actually broken on the control arms that I got when I unpacked them. Now here's the main issue that I had with these control arms. The lower control arm bushings, both of them, were not wide enough to fill up the space in the frame pockets. The inner bushing on the control arm, the metal sleeve, was wide enough. It fit correctly. In fact, I had to grind a little bit of material off of all four of them to get them to fit into the frame pocket. The problem was, once it was installed and bolted down, the entire control arm would move back and forth in the frame pocket freely more than 1/8 of an inch. And so, I mean, that's not good. I mean, if you step on the brake while the car's moving, you're going to have a knocking sound up here. Plus, you won't have a constant caster setting because the control arm is constantly moving back and forth. So, you can see here, I don't know if you can see that very good. I'm trying to hold a light. There's a washer right here on this end. I had to find some thick flat washers that were large in diameter that I had to put behind the bushings in order to take up that extra space and tighten up the control arm in the frame pocket. So I decided to put these washers on the back side, which moved the control arm forward, which also helped with a more desirable caster adjustment. If I'd have moved them backwards, it would have screwed up my caster adjustment a little bit. So that's an issue that I had to overcome. The other issue that I have with these control arms are, and this was not specified in the description, but apparently the spring pockets on these lower control arms must be at a lower elevation than the spring pockets in the factory control arm, because the car sits substantially lower than I would like for it to sit. I do have some aftermarket springs installed in this car, but they are only supposed to show about 1 inch lower than stock ride height. But when I use these springs with these control arms, I have ended up with just about a 3-inch lower than stock ride height. So it's a little bit low. I'm probably going to end up having to change these springs so that I can get the ride height that I want. But all in all, after I got them installed, I like it. It's very heavy duty. The whole car, it totally changed the way the car drove, and it's just pretty nice. One last thing that I will talk about is the upper ball joints that they chose to use in these control arms are not a standard issue A-body GM type ball joint. They have an odd 3-bolt pattern. If these ball joints ever fail, I don't know where in the hell I would get a replacement for them. I have seen some aftermarket tubular control arms that use a standard 4-bolt pattern upper ball joint that is readily available for just a few dollars about anywhere you want to buy auto parts. But this ball joint here is some kind of a bastard part that I've never seen before, and I just don't know where you would get a replacement for it. But other than that, they're on the car, it looks good, and it handles great. That's my review.